welcome to the Eloquence Webcafé. I'm Jelena, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Today's conversation should be informal and interactive, so feel free to use the chat or to jump in with any questions during the Q&A part of the session. I am joined today with two fantastic guests from Telefónica, Jordi and David. And can you both please introduce yourself, and maybe one of you can tell us what is the role of Telefónica in the Eloquence project?
Can I start? So
yes.
Thank you very much, Jelena, for the introduction and for preparing everything for this meeting and this web cafe. So my name is Jordi. I'm a lead research scientist in Telefónica. Just to give you some of the context about me, I'm just doing kind of research on speech processing and linguistics. I have been around 13 years in Telefónica, and right now I'm the principal coordinator also of the ELOQUENCE project. So I work together with David. Maybe David can introduce himself as well.
Sure. Thank you, Jordi and Jelena, for setting up the web cafe. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is David Solans. I have been working in Telefónica for a bit less time, a little time than Jordi, so only 3 years already. My topic of research is the topic of trustworthy AI or responsible AI, with a focus well, in my background, the focus is on the topic of fairness and biases. But in Eloquence, we also work together in the topic of distributed learning, how to split the training of the models among different devices. So I combine the two perspectives, and probably we will talk more about the second one, or maybe the two of them during this web cafe.
Okay, thank you both. So before we start our web cafe session, I'd like to share a couple of words about the Eloquence project itself. So like some of you may already know, Eloquence is a Horizon Europe project that is pioneering the development of advanced voice and chatbot technologies aimed at transforming unstructured dialogues into comprehensible, safe, and unbiased interactions. Our focus is on creating self-learning, adaptable models for diverse languages and use cases, emphasizing sustainability and European values, especially in safety-critical application. So Eloquence really aims to set new standards in AI, ensuring privacy, bias detection, and empathetic user engagement. But our today's focus is more practical. So we'll talk about how AI is entering our homes through smart technologies and how we can ensure these systems are privacy preserving, trustworthy, multilingual, and fair. I'll guide the discussion through a few themes, and then we'll take your questions live. So to start things off, maybe Jordi, you can tell us how AI is shaping the current evolution of smart homes, and maybe you can tell us what's already here, what's emerging, what we can expect.
Sure. This is a really broad question, right? So, I mean, artificial intelligence is already with us. Just came here to stay with us, and in fact, it has been here more time maybe than people think. So you carry on your pocket. You carry on your stay room at home. So, for example, we have been working with home automation since a long time ago, right? So, for example, or I will say another more common example, I will say that is television, right? So we have been growing with television in our homes since a long time ago. I will say almost 1 century, right? Already. And right now, these kind of devices, like televisions, are becoming intelligent, let's say. So you can talk to your television can understand you, you can control and do automation from your television. I don't know, for example, you can switch on, switch off the lights. You can perform a call. You can connect your mobile phone with your television, right? You can link your mobile phone with your television and with your computer, with your laptop. So I think this is a really nice moment where we have all these technologies around, but not only at home. So it's becoming something ubiquitous. So it's everywhere, right? So I would say that the future is already here. This is what I can say.
That's a good answer. So maybe David,
Yeah.
what do you think? What are the biggest opportunities or risks when AI enters everyday domestic life?
That's a good question. So I think the main, if we abstract generalize as much as we can the use of AI in our smart homes, in our homes, let's say, the main usage is to optimize tasks, right, or processes that we conduct every day. And here I will split maybe the processes that the AI is starting to help us in is between two worlds, right, the analogic world and the digital world. In the analogic world, there are these robots that help you cooking your food that you can automatize certain of the tasks, right? In the digital world, I think Jordi was very explaining the topic very well. So yeah, it is helping us doing a combination or combining the different tasks, setting up different processes that combine different digital systems. For example, I think the classical case is the thermostats, the TV, the phone call. Whenever I receive the phone call, the TV pauses the movie I'm watching. So these type of things. At the end, what we are gaining there is time, right? And that's the idea. That AI helps us gaining time for the important topics in our life. Well, that is very different from this. Um, then the risks. There is a bunch of risks, right? So AI in general has a number of risks that fall under the umbrella of trustworthy AI, responsible AI, right? Typically, we talk about fairness, we talk about privacy, we talk about robustness against maybe robustness is about studying how the AI will behave in presence of new data. I mean, can we rely on this automatic system when it is raining outside, for example? Will it mess up the whole functioning of my smart home? And one of the last dimensions of trustworthy AI is also explainability. Explainability helps us understanding or detecting when there is a malfunctioning, hopefully before it happens, right? So those are the four dimensions in trustworthy AI, and all of them do manifest and do apply in the smart homes scenario. For example, fairness, it can be the case. So yeah, I was talking about the usages, but then there is another topic, which is the interface that we use to interact with the system. So there is the the AI helping us with the analogic world, sorry, the AI helping us dealing with the digital world. Then there is the interface. How do we interact with the AI, right? We all, or most of us, do have the YouTube application in our TV. We can interact with that through the controller. But it's true that most of the controllers nowadays do have the button to record our voice, so we can send voice-based instructions. So we have different interfaces, right? The controller itself, our voice, sometimes our gestures, or any other event, trigger event. So here in this project we talk about, so we focus a lot on the speech-based interfaces, right? And here just to frame a bit better the discussion, there are certain risks that clearly apply here. One is the biases do manifest here because depending of the demographic group I'm part of, be it a male or a female, maybe the system will not act, will not react, will not detect my voice with similar performance. So that's something that we try to mitigate. So the risk here is unfairness, and we try to mitigate to maximize fairness or remove biases, right? The other clear risk here is privacy. So we might have an interface here that is listening to us. What we might want to make sure is that our sensitive data, the sensitive conversations that we have in our homes, are not shared to the world. Nobody can access that. Because this is very key. We have very personal conversations that might contain very sensitive information. So we want to protect this first of everything, right? So that's another issue. And of course, there are privacy preserving mechanisms that we are, of course, putting in place already, but also we are studying to go beyond and try to protect these risks. Then there is explainability and robustness that, at least in the context of this project, for us is a secondary aspect. I mean, it's not the main focus, but we are at the same time also studying this. But the main focus is, again, privacy and fairness.
Yes, I agree. I think most people would agree that when AI enters our homes, privacy becomes a very, very real concern. But what could be a solution for these problems? You listed some of them. Maybe Jordi could answer us, give us maybe some concrete answer.
Yeah, I like the idea from David about the digital and the analogic world. And also, I would like to give some more context, right? So, I mean, you already pointed one of the main issues, that is privacy, right? Uh, I started the conversation talking about we already have a lot of sensors around us at home. We have our mobile phones that we are carrying on every day and every minute. We have our smart speakers. We have our television that is able to understand us by a microphone and also react, as David was commenting, through natural queries, voice queries. We also have video cameras, maybe, because you are, I don't know, you are worried about your security, and then you have some parts of your home that are secured by video surveillance, let's say, right? So even your video games probably are also wearing some microphones, and also you interact also with your video games through this modality, right? Speech. So what I mean, the main issue, as David was commenting, is monitoring, right? At the end, so all these devices are gathering information about you, and they are using this information for something. Hopefully, is for giving you a recommendation about the best movie you need to watch after, or maybe just a recommendation about the best cafeteria you should visit, right, or restaurant. But you need to create this kind of trustworthiness in this kind of data gathering, right? So this is really, really personal and private data. And you should ensure that this data is used for the purpose it was supposed to be used, and not for other things. So, for example, monitoring people and gathering this information for making profiles and trying to sell you some stuff that is not on your not in your preferences. So this is not a good example of, or ethical example, right, of using your data, or even taking this data and selling to a third party, right, without your consent. So this is our so these data leaks, I will say, right, and due to this continuous monitoring, and especially it causes probably lack of transparency in the conditions. Once you start your smart speaker, for example, at your home, you go through all the document, I don't know, 10 pages document that tells about what that is about, how the data is processed, and no one's read that thing, right? You go down at the bottom, and you go, yes, let's go. But you don't take care about these kind of things. And so what I mean is that the technology and developers of technology companies should empower users, right, in understanding the implications of this kind of technology, and also the implications. Be fair, well, be fair in the sense, explain to the users for what the technology is used, and let the control to the user to decide which kind of features they want to use and for what.
And from the user perspective, what do you think? What does trustworthy AI mean to them?
Maybe I can take this question. So, trustworthy AI means a lot. I think we are in the process of improving what is called data literacy. So the society starts understanding better and better the risks, right? So I think people in society starts thinking about maybe, if not directly privacy, about the ownership of their data, right? I think this is partially thanks to the GDPR, for example, that has been there already for a few years. So people is starting to think, hey, if I put this smart speaker here, I keep talking around it, where is this information going through, right? And so at the end, it's a problem of data ownership, which is strongly related to privacy, of course, right? So people, at least in my surroundings, I hear these conversations more and more often, right? So people is more concerned about these risks that the potentially uncontrolled use of data might occur to them. So for sure, privacy is very key. But at the same time, we were talking about fairness. Fairness has very different definitions, dimensions, or perspectives, I would say. There is the topic also of accessibility. So before I was talking about the different interfaces that we have to interact with the AI that hopefully are fostering accessibility. But what Jordi was mentioning is also very right? So understanding this process is not accessible to everyone. Even when you have all the information, typically you are unable to digest all this information, all these terms of use, I think it's called. It's very difficult to digest all the information, understand what is behind, because typically it's very technical, but from a legal point of view. So it's very difficult to understand what are your rights in this context. So typically, my understanding, my personal point of view is that as users, we are very exposed to unintended uses of our data. So we don't have a clear ownership of our data. It's true that the GDPR, this type of legislations are fostering this. And of course, I would say especially EU-based companies are putting, are doing greater efforts on protecting or maximizing data ownership, right? So the owners of the data are the users, the producers, and not the companies. But this is a strong change in the mindset, right? That had to occur. So at least this is my perspective. What we don't know is for companies that are not adhering correctly to the GDPR, what is happening with our data. So our data can be sold, can be used for unintended usages, can be used even against us for some tasks, because at the end we don't know who will be accessing our data. So these concerns are all valid, and I think yes, surfing in the internet, we can easily find several examples of the different types of unintended usages of people's data, right? So this is one of the biggest risks. What is the solution here regarding the data ownership? So one of the easier things we can do is, easier, technically speaking, is again changing the mindset. But the classic approach was, hey, let's gather all the data from all the people, we centralize it in our server, and then we train something here, a very advanced model. But there is another alternative, which is maintain data locality. So if your data remains in your phone, in your device, in the speaker, in a database stored there, then nobody from outside will be accessing this data. So that you keep your ownership of the data. And to me, this is one of the most promising approaches here to protect, to maintain data ownership.
That's a really good answer. Thank you, David. So I wanted to also ask you, so many multilingual families and diverse communities are living in smart homes. So how can speech technologies stay inclusive and accessible to everyone in the same smart home?
Yeah, maybe I can answer that question. So multilinguality, I think, is an important feature of Eloquence project, and also as an important feature for humankind, right? So I think there are around more than 7,000 languages in Earth. And we speak few of them, right? So I don't know, maybe you speak couple, people usually speak 2, 3 at most, right? Most of the people at the world only speak one language. That means that probably you cannot communicate with the rest of the people, right, in a proper manner. If you center that thing you focus on the smart homes, probably I am from Catalonia. Here we have 2 official languages, and most of the families are talking in 2 languages at the same time, even, right, in the same conversation, doing a thing that is called code switching. So they are switching between languages in the same conversation with the same party. So multilinguality tries to bring on the table technologies, artificial technologies that are able to understand several languages. So, for example, if you have people talking one language and you're addressing to a smart speaker, or to the television, you are able probably to, or the television is able to understand you perfectly in one language, like for example in English, or maybe even in Spanish. So this is what we call high resource languages. Technology and any kind of technology usually is trained with vast amounts of data. This data comes from somewhere, right? Usually from users. And this is important, and it's related to what David said, right? So the data at the end is the new goal from the 21st century. And this data at the end is used for improving the systems. So right now, the systems has been trained with data collected by researchers, by companies, and those high resource languages has been really, really good trained. What do you mean? English, Spanish performs quite well in those technologies, right? For example, speech recognition. You can perfectly talk to your TV or to your mobile phone, and you talk in English, and it will understand you. But then, if you are, for example, from a small country and really low resource language, for example, Cypriot or Serbian, for example, the performance of those technologies is not as good. So imagine, I don't know, a smart home where there are several students in Erasmus that are sharing the room, right? And everyone talks in different languages. So, for example, only the English ones will perform well when talking to devices, right? And even only the native ones will perform well by talking to this kind of technology. Even the small nuances in the accent or different ways to talk in English, I don't know, in other, because it was not your mother tongue, right? For example, the performance of the devices just drop dramatically. So you talk in Serbian, and the error rates you obtain, but the error rate, I mean, how good is the technology, is really far from English or from Spanish. So one of the things we're trying to do in Eloquence is try to improve multilinguality in the sense that not only big languages, high resource languages like English, Spanish perform well, but also we take into account other languages, for example, from Europe, that are not as well resourced. And then we try to leverage some kind of unexplored techniques that are able to improve this fairness between the performance in different languages. So by doing so, what we expect, for example, is increased inclusivity, right? So we expect to reduce this digital gap that already exists between high resource languages, English, Spanish, for example, and especially in English, because this technology is more adopted in English than, for example, in other kinds of technologies. By doing so, for example, what you do is increase also trust in the user, right? If you have a technology, for example, you start talking in Serbian, maybe technology is not performing well, and then you don't trust the technology because it's making a lot of errors. So at the end, you leave the technology and don't use anymore, right? So, and then this kind of things is creating kind of digital gap between the adopters, right, from the high resource languages. And at the end, we are in Europe. If I'm not wrong, we have almost 30 official languages in Europe, but not all the resources and all the performances across all the languages is the same. And this is one of the gaps we're trying to reduce in the project.
So maybe,
Sorry, just
okay.
to build on top of what Jordi was saying. So coming from let's say, the domain of fairness in AI, there is something that we call the sample size disparity. So what this means is that there are different groups in the population, and the amount of data you can collect for each of them is different, right? I mean, you cannot collect the same data maybe from Spanish speakers, as Jordi was saying, as from Serbian speakers. But this is not always related as 100% with the amount of the population, and I will give an example on this. So first, the sample size disparity. I think all these, when people was abusing the keywords of big data, the assumption there was the more data I can collect, the more accurate the model will be, right? If we follow this assumption, what is clear is that anything that is a social minority we will be able to collect less data from them because they are like smaller in relative size with respect to the majority. So most probably they are creating less data. They are less represented in the data we are collecting. That means that by definition, most probably the model we are training will be less accurate for them just because they are less represented. And this happens with low resource languages and specific accents, as Jordi was suggesting here. Then, before I was talking about data ownership and thinking about these two things, right? So there are incentives. So from the privacy point of view, I don't want to share my data. From the utility point of view, if I share my data, maybe the model will work better for me, right? Examples of this, there are like this world is as intricated as there are conflicting incentives. So
Maybe
of course, you,
I
yeah,
want to sell my data, right? Maybe I don't care about it, or I care about the money, right? And I see the value
yeah.
of my data. I want to sell it, right? So, but that's the point, right? You give that right to the user, and he decides. Right now, there
Exactly.
is few decisions about that.
That's true. That's true. So there are conflicting objectives or incentives, right, regarding your data. What is true is that if you are not, or someone like you with the difficulty of saying who is enough similar to you, is part of the training phase. So if you are not well represented in the training, most probably the model is not going to work well for you. That's one of the issues, right? And that's what drives what Jordi was suggesting here. Then
That is called, sorry,
typically,
it's
sorry, yeah,
called data bias, right? This
yes.
this is called data bias in the jargon.
Yeah, but very focused on the amount of data we have for the different groups. Then talking about this, something I typically challenge when I do, I mean, in my classes, when I do talks is, okay, who do you think is the majority? So we are not talking about the amount of population that speaks a certain language. It's about the amount of resources, the amount of data we can find in the internet typically for this specific population, right? And the classic case here is the more senior people. Every decade, they are a bigger and bigger portion in our societies, in the demographic group. So they are there is more and more senior people as a percentage compared to the rest of the population. But the reality is that in this specific group, despite of being quite big in terms of relative size, they are not that active into the digital world that we were mentioning before. That means that we typically have more problems, more troubles to collect data from them, leading to lower representation in the systems we are building. So in general, of course, there are exceptions for this, but in general, our systems do not capture well their behavioral patterns, their specific conditions, right? For example, the voice being one example of those. So we know how our voice tone, for example, evolves as we keep gaining ages. So at some point, we are because of the problem of accessing enough information from this specific group of people, it might be the case that these automatic speech recognition systems do not work equally well for senior people, just because we lack data on them. It's not that there are few people in our society; it's that from the digital world perspective, they are very small, just because they are not collecting. Uh, they are not creating enough data, right? So we cannot find enough data to train meaningful models for them.
And what's something we can do to increase the trust, user trust in AI, in smart homes, in that whole world?
Maybe I
So
can. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of the best things we can do to improve trust on AI technologies is to give real good explanations and be transparent to the user, right? So in the sense that be clear in communications, as I say at the beginning, right? So don't use really specific and technical terms to explain what the technology is doing. So if you have a smart speaker, or you have a TV, you have a video console that is listening at you, you should explain that, right? So this mobile phone or this smart speaker is listening to you every time, and we use this information for this, and this. And don't use a specific or super technical jargon. Uh, the second thing is once that the user understands what the technology is aimed for, so the next thing is giving the control to the user. So you should create interfaces easy to change those data features, right? So if you don't want to be monitored every time by a smart speaker, you should easily disconnect it. So by, for example, saying switching off, or just by a simple button, right? That just stops completely the monitoring. And this is in the case of the smart speaker, right? Or you should give at the end, give the control and explain the user every time, be transparent. I think this is one of the most important things. And I don't know, David, you want to
Yeah,
add?
in my perspective, trust is super multidimensional. So it's very difficult to understand all the dimensions that a user can have to trust the system or not trust the system, right? I think so. One of the things here is the operational point of view. So how well is the model working for me? And this is not, I mean, this cannot be treated one shot. I mean, it's not something that I use the system once, it works well, then I trust completely the system. No, it comes with time, right? So I need to keep interacting with the system, and it should be working as expected every day. So with the goods and the bads, but if it works every day equally good, and typically people talks about robustness or reliability here. So I can understand, because I understand how the system will operate in this context, I can decide to trust or not to trust the system. But yes, because I understand the operational point of view of the system, right? So to what extent it will work well for me. So this is one of the key factors. So I will use the system only in this context where I believe it will work, right? So for example, the autonomous cars, the cars that drive themselves, if you know that outside the highway you cannot trust them because they are not working well, they are not accurate in how they perceive the road, most probably you are not going to use them outside the highway. Being legal or illegal is on your own decision, just because you don't trust the system outside the highway, right? So at home it can be the same. It's because I rely the system, and my experience tells me that the system might be working well in this context, is because I keep using that. Then there are all these issues of, okay, if I notice that when I speak Catalan and the system is not working well for me, of course this makes me distrust about the system. So if I tend to speak Catalan with my family and then I notice I cannot communicate in Catalan with the system, that will make me use the system less than I would if he was correctly understanding me. So I think this, but again, this is just one dimension of trust here.
Okay, thank you. And to close this first part of our little web cafe session, I'd like to hear both of yours personal take on what's next for privacy preserving AI in smart homes.
So maybe my personal view was already part of this conversation from the very beginning, right? So one of the main issues here is privacy. So just because I have kids, I know the type of conversations I have with my kids, and I don't want an engineer, any scientist, any person in the world to hear that outside my home without my permission, right? So I'm very concerned about my speech data, let's say. So here, privacy-preserving technologies are here to help with that, right? So to give data ownership to the data owners, which are the users, the end users. I mean ourselves, right? So keeping the data locality. I mean, training models locally in your devices at least ensures that your data is only stored in your device. So for that, there is technologies as federated learning, which relies on this aspect, which is, hey, I'm not going to centralize all the data, then train a centralized model. I will either split the training, so every device, let's say, trains a local model, and then what we aggregate is not the data, but the models trained locally. That gives you a certain level of privacy, but still, this model can be so personalized to you that you can, and a skilled attacker will still attack this model to collect information from yourself. But for this, there is also solutions like differential privacy, right? So to me, again, this data locality, the data ownership is very key, and that's what I think is the next generation of technologies will focus a bit more on privacy, and for that, federated learning, distributed learning in general seems to be a good alternative, just because it keeps data where it should remain, right, which is local to the clients, to the users.
From my perspective, I will say again the same, right? So I think the problem is not new. the problem already existed, and several decades ago, we started with the internet. So first time we connect our computers or our mobile phones to the internet, right? We are leveraging a lot of our data and behavioral data. So we are visiting web pages. We are going to some page to buy some stuff. We are buying some tickets for a concert. We are getting flight tickets for visiting one place in, I don't know, Europe. And all these actions you perform in your laptop, even 20 years ago, right? So was already being collected. Even if you don't connect too much to the internet, probably your operating system is gathering information about your behavior, trying to hopefully improve the system, right? Your laptop operating system. The thing here is that right now people is getting more and more aware that this data is being used for artificial intelligence training and for improving those technologies, right? So thanks to that, we now have agents that are able to perform actions like we do, right? Writing an email and sending the email. They are able to collect information about different web pages and decide on the best price for taking a flight ticket, and taking the flight ticket, paying for that on behalf of you. What's next? I guess that people is, as I was saying, getting more and more aware about the value of his data. And I hope people will try to monetize this data in the sense that, okay, if I need to treat my data as it was money, the data should have also be secure somehow, right? So I guess that the next steps will be to fingerprinting probably your own data in order to follow your data in the internet. Because right now, for example, there are technologies that are able to mimic and fake your voices. Thanks, because they were trained with your data and a lot of different voices, right? And right now, we have technologies that are able to drive, because they were gathering data from the drivers. So we have technologies that are able to create videos that resembles real videos of people's, and then doing this kind of deepfakes, right? So, and they are creating these synthetic data sets. So how that thing could differ from the real data, I guess that this is the next step. So we will need mechanisms to sign or fingerprint the real data in order to, for example, monetize, or in order to keep it secure.
Thank
Something
you.
else, sorry, but yeah, just a quick comment. So something else I see here is that, yeah, in the past, of course, few pages were collecting data. I mean, there were some data collectors, let's say, not only pages, that were collecting data about ourselves. But one of the challenges here is that nowadays we are exposed to so many data collectors that
Yeah.
and the digital world, let's say, is getting a leading role in our lives. So we are so exposed to the digital world that at the end, most of our personal life is reflected in the digital world also. And then it's not that only our internet searching activity is being recorded, is that our whole life might be being recorded, if not completely, at least partially, right? Then, when we have so many dimensions of our personality being recorded, someone who with full access to this data can combine all these data sets to get knowledge about ourselves that maybe we lack, right? So knowing more about ourselves than we know. That's one of the key challenges in privacy. So it's not only about what an attacker can do with this data, is the fact that we are so represented in the digital world that an attacker with enough can access enough information to access a variety of topics in our life. So that's one of the challenges that I see here. To me, beyond the fingerprint, which is, I would say, very market-oriented approach, here is, okay, if we don't start building systems that mitigate this issue, that again, talking about not exposing my data or giving me rights about my data, we will not be solving the problem here. And then one thing else, so we know the GDPR, the companies are like operating under this umbrella, But there is one right there that we all have as users, which is the right to be forgotten, right? So we have the right to ask any company to say, hey, delete my data. Companies can delete your data, but what happens with the models that were already trained with this data? How do we delete your personal information from this model, knowing that this model represents you and got some knowledge from there, right? So this is still an open challenge for the research community. Of course, there are actions, there are solutions for this, but I would say this is not something that is fully embedded into the company software, I would say. So there are challenges to do that. And this is something that I think in the near future also needs to be addressed, which is part of our privacy. So, okay, at some point we might opt in to participate into the training of an AI system, but at some point we can also decide to step out, right? And this is our right.
But this was my point, David. I mean, it was not market point of view. It was more like a user point of view, right? So
Yeah.
for sure, technology will be compliance with law. That's for sure, right? But it doesn't mean that the companies sometimes are compliant or technology is compliance, right? So they try to regulate, and even there are markets where it's not regulated, right? So, and as you say, people should have right to data forgotten, right? But how you ensure that your data has been forgotten, right? So how you ensure that your data is not in that model, how you ensure that your data was not used for that purpose. This is what I was trying to say, that we need mechanisms to give to the user in order to be able to track your data and be sure that the model was not trained with your data. So I don't know which kind of technology it should be, but it could be blockchain, it could be some kind of fingerprinting. It depends, as you say, right now it's not as 30 years ago. 30 years ago we only have navigation patterns through the internet, but right now people is wearing glasses with video cameras through the street, right? So right now you have your mobile phone that is continuously monitoring everything, looking for what a word from you, but it's also monitoring everything, right? So you talk to a colleague, and then your mobile phone, and probably your mobile phone from your colleague is also monitoring that conversation. And hopefully it's not using rather than for detecting hello Gemini, for example, right? So how you be sure, right, that your data is not used, because your data, as I said, is gold mine. So how you be sure that you can claim the rights for your data once OpenAI, for example, has trained using all the books from whatever collection without the rights of the owners, right? I mean, if you are a big company, maybe you can suit OpenAI, but if you are only one user, you cannot suit these big companies, right? So you will not expect nothing about your data. So
Yeah.
we need to give this power, right? And this was my idea.
I think we agree on the technical challenge that it poses, right? So first, from the company point of view, how to operationalize the problem of forgetting about people's data is very difficult. And then from the very user perspective, how to make sure that my rights are fully respected by a given system is very difficult, right? For example, the case of fairness is always very difficult to detect from the individual user point of view, right? So if the system doesn't work very well for me, I don't know if that's the case for everybody in the world, or it's only because of my personal condition that the system is not working well, right? So it's very difficult to understand if there is a systematic bias here, or is my system that has a not working microphone, or what. So yeah, these mechanisms, but I would say are very, of course, they need to be designed and together with the legislation, the social point of view, the user experience, and so on. But most of the components lacking here are very technical. So how to make this happen, how to quantify this, how to detect this automatically is very difficult still.
Thank you both. Those are really good insights. This was quite interesting to hear. So I would like to wrap this part of our session and to read you one question that we got in the chat. So Boschko says, in terms of responsibility, who or what can be accountable in the event of AI malfunctions, particularly regarding safety and privacy?
Can try to answer, but that's a good question, a really good question, but there is a lot of context, no, to be or to point some responsible. Maybe there is not only one responsible. For example, imagine you have your shared laptop or shared computer at home, right? And then this computer is the family computer, and then you share among your wife, about your child. Sometimes even some friend comes to your home and then takes also some time of that computer. I mean, if something happened in terms of security on that computer, and then there is a data breach. So, for example, some of your photos in that computer goes to somewhere that shouldn't be. Then what's the responsible for that? So in that case, maybe I would say, okay, did you as a user create some word rails? So for example, you create user accounts with some passwords. So if you don't, and you have this computer in the middle of your home using by whatever people that comes, then maybe it's the fault of the user. But then this responsibility maybe is not only from the user, it's also from the creator of the operating system that allows you to do not create, to use the computer without user accounts with passwords. And then also we have the example that David was commenting about the autonomous driving, right? So you create a system that is able to drive cars, and then this system gets an accident, right? A car crash. Then who's responsible for that? Is the developer of the AI? Is the I don't know. Is maybe the legislation that doesn't take into account that the AI cannot drive? I mean, this is in fact this is one of the problems that we have right now in order to leverage this kind of technology in the worldwide, right? So there is no clear responsibility sometimes, and I guess that this is something that should be a legislation that take into account, right? Which is the owner of the technology. It should be the developer. It should be for example, it should be NVIDIA that just leverage the GPUs, no, for performing the operations of the technology. It's a really complex problem, and I guess that this responsibility depends on the context and also depends on the case, sadly the case.
So I tend to think that I need to make a tattoo myself that says multidimensionality, because I think this is the classic answer I always give. So in my view, there's again multiple dimensions, right? So I think if you follow the AI Act, what it says is that software manufacturers, app creators, basically the ones that sell the software, the software can be embedded in a car, for example, but the ones that are selling this product are the ones that are held responsible of the potential unintended behaviors. But this is like the legal perspective, one dimension. Then something I tend to think is that we as engineers or system creators tend to think a lot on the optimization of the system to make the system very optimized. And then we typically forget that this system typically is to be deployed in a society, so interacting with humans, right? And it might affect people's lives, rights, and freedoms, right? Somehow. So this social perspective, I don't think is embedded by nature into the systems, and this makes ourselves accountable of a different dimension, which might be not the legal one. I mean, as individuals, as an engineer, as a part of an organization, but as individuals, we are responsible of part of this, at least from the moral and ethical point of view, right? And then we should not forget about something else. We as users, as end users, customers of these products, we also have a responsibility here, which is, hey, did I gather enough information to make sure I want to use this system? So do I understand all the implications of using this? And this is, I think, a discussion, like an internal discussion that we typically don't do ourselves, right? So am I aware of all the potential trade-offs that I'm exposed to? I mean, Do I agree of potentially compromising my privacy by using this system? This is something that typically we don't think about, maybe because we lack data literacy, we don't understand enough the system, the context. But at least there are the three: the legal perspective for the companies, the moral and ethical point of view for the individual engineers, let's say, and then the last one, which is the end user. Of course, they might not have enough information, but so there is another part of the chain, right?
And probably this is why we need continuously audit these kind of systems, right? From the perspective of the user. So the user should give developers, manufacturers continuous feedback about the products, AI products, but also should be independent audits about the technology, right? Because this technology, as David was mentioning, should be not static and should be evolved continuously. Because even you cannot deploy a perfect system never, right? And this system, in fact, once you deploy it, is gonna start being biased because society evolves. So, and then in order to catch up with these changes, you need to perform this kind of feedback, right? From the user and from the society itself. And
I agree, but there are few challenges, no? You know that when you are trying to build a system, maybe you are solving something in this side, and by solving this something, you are destroying something in the other side, right? So satisfying everything together, again, multiple dimensions, is super difficult, right? So it's nearly impossible. Then it's a matter of paying the trade-off. So maybe I cannot maximize the performance of the system, the accuracy of the system, while at the same time respecting privacy, plus respecting or minimizing unfairness. The thing here is how to find the point in the middle, the point in which I have enough accuracy to operate, but I'm respecting the privacy of I'm ensuring, guaranteeing the privacy of the user, plus maximizing, at least with a given point of view, the unfairness or the fairness of the system. So I reduce the biases as much as I can. But of course, biases, there is a lot of definitions, but at least you adhere to one and you try to satisfy this one. So the three, privacy, fairness, and utility, accuracy, are conflicting objectives. So you need to pay a bit of something to gain in the other side. And finding the point in the middle is something that is very difficult. But of course, luckily in this case, I think there is enough technology, there is enough solutions here. It's a matter of defining or looking for, optimizing for the three objectives. In this case, it's three, but it could be more. The three objectives together. You cannot treat them in isolation. So you need to optimize for the three together to find a potential optima. So, and I think this is a mindset that is happening more and more. But again, technically speaking, is complex.
Okay, and Jordi, do you have something to add?
well, I mean, it's a really complex problem. Maybe there is not a unique solution, right? In fact, it's a user-dependent solution as well. So there are some red lines, I will say, right, that we should not pass. That for sure, and should be should be compliance with law, and this should be a clear legislation what can be done and what cannot be done. But then, depending on those dimensions that we was commenting, there is different operational points depending on the user preferences, right? Maybe you don't care about your data if you get the best performance possible, right? I don't know, in some technology. But maybe you are a different kind of user and you keep a lot of worry about your data privacy, right? And then technologies like, as well, David was mentioning, on-site training, device training, federation training allows you to do not share this data with any. And thanks to technology, because we have computers right now, bigger computers in our pockets, we can train these technologies without relying in cloud services, let's say, right? And then it increases privacy at the, of course, it increases privacy, but then you get, let's say, not as good systems, a little bit less performing system. But then this is a trade-off that is going to depend on the user, right? And what he matters about.
Okay, we have.
Yeah, sorry, related to that, sorry for jumping in again.
No, please continue.
I would like to bring an alternative perspective here. I think Jordi was touching a bit the user preferences, right? one of the difficulties here is that typically user preferences are not written in stone, so they are written in
They're
paper.
evolving. They're evolving.
Right, they are written in paper. That means that sometimes user preferences, users do destroy their paper with their preferences and they build new ones. Then from the technical point of view, adapting to these changes is very difficult. One of the approaches here, or the main approach, is doing that through personalization. So I keep monitoring your behavior, your preferences, so I try to adapt always the system to your unique conditions, understanding that these conditions might evolve with time, as Jordi was saying. And for that, I think also having this locality, not only about the data, but about the models, facilitate the fact that these models represent well your preferences, because those were personalized, they were specialized for yourself, right? So personalization here, I think, is key. Is somehow, from this point of view, is related to the privacy. So you, by keeping everything local, you guarantee privacy, a certain level of privacy, plus you facilitate the personalization. So in my point of view, talking about preferences, personalization is the way of doing. I mean, keeping data locality, we might get not only privacy but also personalization, which might solve certain of these things. Then it can be a model that has a certain operational point of view as point of action, as Jordi was saying, for user one, and a different behavior for user two, because the second user C might think about, I don't know, have different perspectives, preferences. So we can, through personalization, we can achieve this.
In fact, if you remember that movie, I love that movie from, it was called Her. It was an operating,
Yes.
it was an operating system that it was advanced operating system, and it was a guy that fell in love with this operating system, right? Because it was a super advanced system. He was talking to him. So at the end, what we are building right now, and this is an amazing period of time we live, is kind of technology that is able to understand like a friend understands us, right? So you are giving more information to that technology that even gives even to your mom or to your brother or to your sister. They know a lot of things about you. You allow this technology to enter your schedule, your agenda, your emails, right? And this technology is able to become your personal assistant. So at the end, there's a trade-off between usability and privacy, right? So at some point, if you want to have this kind of companions, this kind of virtual assistants that are able to perform all these tasks on behalf of you, you should trust the technology. But of course, you should ensure that this trust is real, like a really good friend, right? So if you tell some secret to your friend, probably it's because you trust him that is not gonna disclose it to any other people, right? So how we can ensure this in this digital world, right? Because there is not a real friend. What we are building is a product from a company. And then this is what we need third parties, right? Like governments and legislations, certifications that ensure that this can be allowed.
You know, reality always follows science fiction, and recently I have read in the media. I mean, this is not even research, right? So this is in the newspapers. They were talking about a case of a person that fall in love with ChatGPT, just because this person was interacting with ChatGPT so often that I think he or she thought started to believe or to understand, perceive that the system was very able to understand the point of view this person had. So at the end, he or she was falling in love with the system. The technical issue this person was experiencing is that because of ChatGPT having a maximum memory, the maximum context it can consider in each conversation, at some point the system was like resetting and forgetting about the relationship they were building. So they had to restart the relationship. So this person was suing OpenAI just because this frustration, but love frustration, I would say, that this person was experiencing. So this movie you were mentioning and the reality are not that far away, I would say.
In fact, it came to my mind the other extreme case, right, about OpenAI and ChatGPT. There was this, I think it was a boy that suicide due to bad advices about ChatGPT, and then the family from the guy was suing also OpenAI about this issue, right? So at the end, a simple chat can create a lot of harm, right? Depending on how you use the technology and if you don't have the right web rails. And this is related to what Bosco questions in the chat, right? So who's responsible now from that behavior, right? That from digital world create a real harm in analogic world, right? As harmed as a person decide to suicide, right? Of course, you cannot use a personal assistant probably for psychology advices, and it should be detected, right? But there are a lot of different use cases probably and different ways that this technology, as I said before, we're creating friends, we're creating companions, we're creating a virtual assistant, and there are a lot of different situations because this digital world and this analogic world are mixed every day even more. So that we cannot imagine, right? So at the end, I guess that this technology should have their own personality and should be judged as persons, and they should follow somehow the legislation that they were humans at some point in the future. Let's see what happens.
Okay, we have one more question from our audience. She says, do you think architects and interior designers will eventually need to plan homes with AI infrastructure in mind, similar to how we once adapted to electricity and the internet?
I can take this one at least first. So I would say definitely yes. So I have a number of cybersecurity experts that are my friends, right? And these people who are very aware and very expert on very specific type of risks on the technology and the AI, these people tend to have a NAS server in their homes, right? And a NAS server is a server that you put at home. It's a computer with a big hard disk in which you store all your data in a private way, right? In a secure way because it's only local in your internet connection, in your local internet connection. So these people are already building something in this direction, right? So they are creating their server. For that, they need to put a cable between the server and the router, for example. So I tend to think that yes, this will happen more and more. And of course, maybe we need more wired internet connections together with all the electricity plug-ins, right? Just because in all the plug-ins, we will connect a cable to the internet or maybe with Wi-Fi. But there are more and more connected devices. That means that our routers need to be more powerful, and even the input bandwidth, we need more and more, right? So yes, my response is definitely yes. One alternative point of view here is that I don't think it will happen next year. So there is a lot of marketing, a lot of hype around the AI, and the reality, I recommend reading, there is an author called Arvind Narayanan that is, to me, a very well respected researcher in privacy, fairness, and accountability. And he has wrote a white paper saying AI is nothing but another technology, right? So there is nothing new in so it may be very, very powerful, very capable of doing nice stuff, but the thing that limits its impact in reality, in practice, is the adoption rate. And in practice, everybody's talking about AI, but the adoption rate is still low, right? So there are surveys asking people how do they operate with ChatGPT, for which tasks do they use ChatGPT. All the media talks about the ChatGPT, but I think 80% of the usage was for personal purposes. Maybe, yeah, writing text for personal purposes, not even automatizing work at their professional career. So the adoption is very key factor here that typically media forget about that. And just to be very concise here, so I think it will happen, but not next year. So it will take time.
If I might say something as well, I really agree, David. I think homes should be somehow think in advance with the AI technology in mind. So, for example, I mean, right now we have all water pumps, right, at home at this time. So we have a heater as well. So, and when the designer or the architect is building a house, it's taking into account the space for this heater, right? And it's also, I don't know, it's taking the space for the AC installation, right? Some these kind of commodities. So at some point, the AI will be a commodity as well for all the people. Right now, I will say it is, but the main problem is that the main brain of this AI and the main processing power is not at home of the users, it's at the cloud. And for example, if you want to run ChatGPT, you need to run it making a query to a service that is in the cloud. Your query goes through the internet and then it goes to the company, right? It was a time we had a phone at our homes. Now we have this phone in our pocket, right? And this phone is connected to the internet. I think this is something that is going to one side and then coming back, right? So now we need this power of computation and we need these cloud services, but the power in our phones is getting more and more impressive. And probably we will also have the revolution in the next years about robotics. We will have a robot, I don't know, 5-10 years in the future, we will have a robot in our houses. And the main brain of that robot will have the same problem, will be controlled by cloud service. I would like to think that we have our own robots at home with our own service at home as well. So we buy a supercomputer, let's say, right, 100 times more powerful than we have nowadays, and then you keep in your home. And then your data is stored there, all the algorithms that rely your phone on, and your robot, your personal robot assistant rely on, is built and trained with your personal data in a personal manner and secure manner in your home. I would like to think that's the way, but not sure if this is the most, I would say, green perspective, right? I don't know if we can afford to have this kind of computation at home for all of us, but it should be the way too. It should be a commodity present in every home.
Just to finish, because I understand we are very close to wrapping up this session because of time. Just because you were mentioning the cloud, I would like to finish my participation in this in this Webcafé with a little joke. So if the audience wants to see this, there is a video in YouTube of a politician talking about the cloud computing, and one of the concerns this politician explains is what will happen with the cloud when it rains. Right, so I recommend you go to YouTube and see this video because it's real and
It's for real.
it's about, yeah, I think it's the perspective, the hype, and typically the lack of data literacy that we are exposed, which are topics that we have been discussing in this session. So having said that, it was my pleasure to be here. Very nice conversation, and thank you, Jelena, for setting up this and for moderating and raising the questions.
Thank you. Thank you both, Jordi and David, for this discussion. I really enjoyed meeting you both and kind of learning more about what you do at Telefónica. And thanks to everyone who joined and contributed. Like I said in the beginning, this recording will be online on our YouTube page, so you can watch it later. It will be shared across our social media, so make sure to like, share, subscribe. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you at our next session.
Thanks to you.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.